Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is another reaction to infographics show, and I know this video is gonna be. This isn't for everyone. I know these videos aren't for everyone, and it's been a long time since I've done one of these military comparison videos. I remember I did the reaction. I think it was to the USA or the United States versus the UK, and there was definitely one of like, could the United States military win against the world or something like along the lines of that. And I find them quite fun. Again, I know these videos aren't for everyone because, I don't know, just some topics people don't enjoy, but I've always found these ones interesting. Even just the sort of the guessing and sort of guesstimates and facts and opinions behind some of these videos. I just find it fun. But yeah, for those who aren't interested, I apologise. But for those of you who enjoy these reactions, suggest some more that you want to see like this. Again, I do enjoy these sorts of videos, so I'd appreciate the suggestions. But yeah, let's get into this. Quick shout out to my Instagram and my Twitter, links in the description for those interested. Save my Patreon, links all there for those interested. But let's check this out, man. Let's see what the infographics show, who I know they're not the best at certain things, at explaining certain things, they have a biased view to certain things, have to say. Let's check this out.
This video is sponsored by Conflict of Nations, the free online strategy game where your objective is simple. Just take over the whole world. Join a community of
Is this just holding an ad? You know how it is, man. Get your money. I'm happy for you, infographics show. You probably got enough anyway, but I'm happy for you, boys and girls.
2020, the US is still the world's sole right now. In the year 2020, the US is still the world's sole superpower, but China is not far behind.
I wonder where the UK is in this race. We're probably about, what, 30th place? God, it's peak times for British people, man. What's happened? What's happened?
Nations have huge amounts of influence across the globe and economies that generate enormous wealth. But what about their militaries? If China and the United States were to go to war, who would have the advantage? In this military comparison, we're pitting China's People's Liberation Army against the United States military to see how they match up. After we lay out
also, fingers crossed this never actually happens.
Who will win in an all-out war? Bear in mind that both of these militaries are always changing, so it's important to keep an eye on the future. In the end, it'll all come down to which country has the stronger and smarter military. Let's see if you come to the same conclusion we do of who would win in a war between China and the United States of America. In terms of resources, China and the US are both well equipped to support their militaries during the war. It's well known that the United States spends more money than any other country on its military. The most recent military budget for the United States was around $721 billion. That's more than many countries' entire GDP. On the other hand, China's military budget is around $178 billion. Notice the huge contrast.
Thing is, that's so much, but it's just nothing compared
between the two nations' military spending. Just in pure spending, the United States beats China. But just because a country spends a lot of money does not mean they have the better military equipment or personnel. Although the United States invests more money in their military, China leads with a different resource:
Again, I've definitely searched this before, but I just want to see UK military spending. I gotta see the comparison to the UK as well. Oh, can't spell. 39 billion. Fuck it now. The US is nearly 20 times bigger, or is like 20 times bigger, or like 18 times bigger. China's like 5 times bigger. Bloody hell. And our military is considered one of the best in the world as well. Fuck
power. If all-out war happened, the ability to manufacture weapons and replenish casualties would be vital. The current population of the United States is...
This is a big one. See, my sort of general sort of opinion going into this is the US has the better sort of war equipment's not the right word, like warships, or I can't think of the word, aircraft, etc., aircraft carriers, all these different things. And China has the population. Not to say China's not got like good equipment themselves, and the US doesn't have a doesn't have a big population. But yeah, that's sort of what my prejudgment was getting into.
Just over 330 million people. The population of China, around 1.5 billion people. Of course, not everyone in each population would be able to fight or work in factories, but just in terms of people, China vastly outnumbers the US. This brings us to the active number of military personnel in each country. Who has the bigger military? Well, it should come as no surprise that the number of soldiers in China's military is much larger than the United States. With more people in the country, there are more people in the military. In fact, the number of military personnel in China is almost double the amount of military personnel in the United States. The US military consists of around 1.3 million personnel on active duty. The The People's Liberation Army has just over 2 million military personnel. If war broke out between the two countries, the United States would need to immediately reinstate the draft, just to come close to matching the number of military personnel the People's Liberation Army currently has. Due to the immense size of the Pacific Ocean, a war between China and the US would most likely not start on land. So let's first look at the Air Force capabilities of each nation and how they stack up against one another. The total number of military aircraft the United States has is around 5,370. China's Air Force contains about 3,010 planes, but these numbers are always fluctuating as new planes are built and old aircraft are retired. Right now, the Chinese military is building and purchasing aircraft much faster than the US. It's estimated that in a few years, the number of aircraft between the two nations will be comparable. But what about the types of aircraft? Which country has better fighter planes, bombers, and transports? The United States has a vast array of aircraft at their disposal, the most impressive of which are the F-35 Lightning, F-22 Raptor, and F-15 Eagle. These fighter jets help the U.S. maintain air superiority. However, China has its own stealth fighter in the J-20, although it's only available in extremely low numbers and is generally considered a poor man's version of the American F-35.
Oh, wow.
In the air, the American military still retains a lethal advantage over the Chinese military with more sophisticated avionics, a much larger fleet of 50.
I still find it so crazy how you can fuel airplanes mid-flight. It's absolutely nuts to me, man. Is this like a dangerous procedure to do? Is it like quite not a risk-free? Because obviously if you're trained in it, it's going to be easier, right? But there must be a lot of cases of this going wrong and, I don't know, a plane setting fire or whatever. I just find it so crazy how you can do it in the air, man. It's
fifth-generation aircraft and a far greater number of support aircraft such as tankers and AWACS platforms. American pilots also train on average 20 to 30 hours more per year than their Chinese counterparts, and in more realistic scenarios than the Chinese. As we look at other aspects of the Air Force in each country, we find that larger aircraft such as bombers and transports are not equal. The United States has a clear advantage. There are two reasons for this. The first is because the U.S. just has more aircraft. The second reason is because a lot of money being pumped into the United States military goes to research and development each year. The United States aircrafts are up to date, while the Chinese Air Force is still working with functional but older models. You don't need to look much further than the United States' Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, Northrop B-2 Spirit, and Rockwell B-1 Lancer to show that in terms of dominating ground targets from the air, the U.S. has the advantage.
Just imagine this coming to your country, man. Imagine it just flying over you. You're just spooked already. Like, the shape of it, the shadow that it brings, you're just spooked out already. I'd see that and I'd just be like, yeah, you know what? You've won the war already. I'm not getting involved. Fuck that. Because it's like a UFO, man. They're crazy, crazy planes, man. I love the look of them, but at the same time, they're so damn intimidating.
In the skies, the next most important military technology in a war between China and the U.S. would be the Navy. Controlling the oceans in this conflict would be vital for success. One of the most important ships in a naval arsenal would be the aircraft carrier. The floating fortresses would be crucial to launching airstrikes on the opposing country. Currently, the United States is the world leader in aircraft carriers. The U.S. has 11 active aircraft carriers, while China only has 2, and only one of those is currently rated as combat ready. This clearly puts dominance of the ocean in favor of the United States military. But what about other warships? If China could destroy the U.S. aircraft carriers, would they have the advantage? The United States currently has around 430 naval ships on active and reserve duty. However, only about 300 of those ships are currently able to deploy at a moment's notice. If war broke out between China and the United States right now, China would have a fleet of 335 ships to call upon. But just like the case for the US, not every ship would be available for combat, with about 20% on each side being currently undergoing maintenance, retrofit, or rest and relaxation for its crews. Without eliminating the US's aircraft carrier fleet, China would stand no chance of victory in the Pacific if all-out conflict took place. Yet even with American carriers out of action, China would be extremely hard-pressed to deal with the American submarine fleet. While it has its own fleet of 74 subs versus the US's 66, China severely lacks in anti-submarine warfare assets and would be ill-equipped to take on America's silent service. On the American side, a disastrous performance by its own anti-submarine warfare assets during exercises in the early 2000s revealed a terrible crumbling of the American Navy's capability to wage anti-submarine warfare after the end of the Cold War. Since then, and with the help of ultra-silent diesel submarines from partner nations, the U.S. has undertaken great steps to once again bolster its ASW capabilities and is believed to be well prepared to face any enemy fleet as the world prepares for great power competitions once again. For now, the U.S. fleet remains supreme, but it's divided between responsibilities around the world, while China can focus the entirety of its efforts in fighting America's Pacific Fleet alone. With a rapidly modernizing fleet and more sophisticated shipbuilding efforts, China looks set to close the gap between itself and the U.S. in the approaching decades. What would happen if the war made its way to land, though? Obviously, it would depend on where the war was being fought. The nation battling on their home turf would...
If it was in the US, I feel like it'd be a lot easier to defend for the US because, obviously, I remember seeing a video before and, like, obviously, you know the US's Navy and, like, in the air, wherever it is, in the ocean, wherever it is, the US is stronger. And they've only got two countries to battle, to sort of fight from. Obviously, you've got Canada, who they're strong allies with anyway, and Mexico. But then China's got, how many countries is it surrounded by? Obviously, it's surrounded by Japan, not by land, but the US is, like, strong allies with them. Plus, it's just got countries surrounding it, some that maybe it's allies with, but if the US gets to them countries, and then it gets, obviously, to China, it's a big issue, man. So, I mean, I guess if it came to land, China is in a much more vulnerable position anyway. And then you can factor in, and then you take in the fact that the US is just dominates in pretty much everything. I'm not sure what's going to be about tanks and obviously soldiers. China has more, but it's interesting, man. I'm interested to see what he has to say next. But again, it's just crazy how China is such a powerful military and they're still dwarfed by the US.
They ultimately have the advantage because of their ability to replenish land forces more easily. Let's take location out of the equation and just compare the land-based military capabilities of each nation. We know that in terms of soldiers, China outnumbers the US. We also know that if soldier numbers need to be replenished, there are many more people to choose from in China than in the US. Basically, if the two countries went to war using only soldiers, the United States would eventually succumb to the large number of available manpower China has. That being said, this is not how wars are fought anymore. Instead, land battles can be won using machinery, such as tanks. The United States has a tank arsenal of around 8,010 vehicles. The US's main battle tank is the legendary M1 Abrams, of which not a single one has been lost to enemy action yet. If deployed, the United States tank army would be a devastating force. It would plow through anything in its path. China has fewer tanks at around 6,560, and just under half of those are first-generation tanks dating back to the early Cold War era. Around 2,360 of the Chinese tanks are Type 59s. These tanks were produced in the 50s and 60s. They're antiquated.
So their tanks are dodgy then. These tanks are just like getting absolutely destroyed by the US ones. This is pain, man. And I can tell you one thing for sure, China would absolutely obliterate the UK if it wasn't for like countries like the US. So I mean, I'm saying this, and China is such a powerful country, but then it just compares. It's just crazy, man. How it is just so one-sided, other than population. But again, at this point, that doesn't really matter in wars. I mean, it doesn't matter, but machinery is where it's at, man.
And currently retired, but still kept in reserve. This means that the tank force of China is actually much smaller than the United States'.
Wow.
The US pours billions of dollars into upgrading their tanks with state-of-the-art equipment and keeping their forces modernized. Clearly, the United States would decimate China in a tank battle. In today's day and age, battles are rarely fought only on the ground. At some point, they may not even be fought on the planet.
In space,
Recently, the United States has implemented a new branch of the military, Space Force. Space Force's missions is to organize, train, and equip space forces in order to protect U.S. and allied interests in space and to provide space capabilities to the Joint Force. It is clear that the United States is moving toward militarizing this new horizon. But is China? Recent reports have shown...
But imagine, like... You got one military in the space who are just powerful and they get to space every time, because like obviously launching for space is a big deal. It costs a lot and it's hard to do. You see with like Elon Musk, etc. Imagine like China does it and they just can't. Their rockets just can't reach space. That would be depressing, man. I assume it wouldn't get to that point, but that would just be like, you've not even got to space and you can't even battle. It's just
that China has been rapidly expanding its space program. They were the third country to launch a human into space behind the former Soviet Union, now Russia, and the United States. China completed this feat back in 2003 and has since ramped up their space program. They are the first and only country to put a rover on the far side of the moon. where they've made several discoveries.
Wow.
China has also been launching more and more satellites and military spacecraft into space in recent years. It's estimated that China has more than 320 satellites. 105 of them are military in nature. The United States has around 123 military satellites, even though the US has been in space much longer than China. It would seem that the breakthroughs at the China National Space Administration have greatly sped up the military satellite capabilities of the country. The budget for NASA in the United States has been cut year after year, almost immediately after they put the first man on the moon. China's space program, on the other hand, seems to be getting an influx of money each year from the government. How long until the research and development of China's engineers and space scientists surpass the US? In space, the country with the best technology and most knowledge of the environment will be victorious in battle. If the United States continues to fall behind in space exploration, they will not stand a chance in the space war with China.
That's a big
this
one.
brings us
China's
to our last comparison between the two countries. A comparison that has no winner. Instead, everyone loses. We're talking about nuclear weapons. As of right now, China has an estimated total of 320 nuclear warheads. That might seem like a lot, but it is nothing compared to the amount of nuclear weapons the United States has stockpiled. The United States has about 6,370 nuclear warheads under its control. 2,000 of those nukes are awaiting to be dismantled and disposed of. However, if nuclear war broke out...
How do you dispose of a nuke? How does that... You can't send it in space, right? Because that would cost so much. And obviously if it goes wrong, crashing in 12. How do you dispose of nukes?
China and the US, neither country would get a chance to use all their nuclear weapons. The human race would be annihilated long before then. So it's probably in China's and the United States' and the entire world's best interest that nuclear war never comes. Although the United States has a slight military advantage over China, we can't underestimate how far China's military has come in a relatively short amount of time. Also, the vast amount of manpower could be enough to allow China to hold out for a long time, slowly depleting the United States' resources. However, the reason we believe that the United States would win a war with China is because of experience. The United States has a lot more military experience than China. This means that the leaders of the military have seen combat and know what works and what doesn't. The US has been at war almost perpetually in one form or another since World War II, most recently in the Middle East. Since the beginning of Desert Storm in 1991, the United States has maintained a military presence in the Middle East. In fact, the United States has been fighting in Afghanistan for almost 18 years. This means military personnel and leaders have constantly been gaining skills and experience in the art of war. China, on the other hand, has not fought in a war in over 40 years. The last war...
Do the US soldiers in, like, the Middle East, the US bases, like, because obviously you got the US, I always forget what they're called, the US base in Germany, that's like a US city. Do you have these in, like, countries in the Middle East where the soldiers in the US will sort of, they'll patrol in, like, cities and stuff, but then they'll go back to, like, the US bases that are sort of more like home? Like, how would that work? Or do they go to, like, embassies within the countries? Because I assume they have to sort of sleep, or, like, yeah, or sleep in, like, places that aren't, like, risk for them. Because obviously I feel like if you're a US troop or an English troop or a French troop in a foreign country, your dangers are higher because maybe people are a lot more hostile to you and stuff.
Where they fought in was in 1970.
So yeah, is it like, is that when sleeping in US bases or whatever it is, UK bases or whatever, is that when it comes into play? I find bases so cool, man. When it comes to bases, they're probably the most interesting thing for me, man. I find it crazy how there's like mini US cities, mini UK cities within a country that's so different. Like, it's just crazy to me, man.
1979, when China invaded Vietnam. Vietnam had just come out of its own civil war and had gained much experience during that time. The small country was able to humiliate the Chinese military, forcing them out of their country after only 3 weeks. It seems that experience can outweigh sheer numbers during wartime. It is for this reason that we believe the United States would win a war with China if it were fought today. However, and some of you might have already seen this coming, if China continues to expand and upgrade their military as they've been doing in recent years, it will not be long before their military strength surpasses the United States. If this happens, it's a very real possibility that China would win a war against the United States in the future. Their drive to update their machinery and technology can be seen in their space program and the expansion of their military. Within the next decade, we at the Infographics Show may need to make a new video to reevaluate this military comparison between China and the United States, with the winner being the People's Liberation Army of China. Thanks to our sponsor, Conflict of...
Interesting one, man. Again, I enjoy these comparison ones. It's just fun to see. In a sick way, it's fun to see. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's fun to see this kind of stuff happening, but it's just it's just like something that I like to see. I don't like to see it. I don't know how to explain it without sounding like a psycho. I think it's quite cool to see this kind of stuff. There we go. And to just see the comparisons and stuff. If the US and China broke out on a war, Germany would attack France purely out of habit. To be fair, I think Germany's actually like a really peaceful country now, isn't it? So, I mean, yeah, but good comment. When China gets onto mainland USA, random country girl, I didn't see Geneva suggestions. Keep in mind, all of China's military stuff is made in China. Is any of the US military stuff sort of stuff that comes from China as well? That would be weird. I assume it's all made in the US, like, without, like, so you don't have the chances of having it manipulated or whatever. That's a weird thought, though. It's all about allies. None of them would fight a war alone. American soldiers would be like, I kept shooting the same guy. Wait. I'm confused. Have I taken it the wrong way? That sounds kind of racist, you know, but I don't know if I missed something in the video that's sort of coming up. Fucking hell, bro. You're kind of strong there. Nuclear arms race is like two sworn enemies standing waist deep in gasoline. One of the three matches, the other were five. Even if China was winning a war against America, the Americans would never go out silently. This is my favourite thing about this country. And I mean, yeah, again, that's the thing. So many people in the US are sort of armed with guns. People are able to protect themselves if this kind of thing happened. I don't think it's the same case in China. I don't actually know, but I don't think it's the same case. I don't think guns are legal in China. But yeah, that's another factor, to be fair, that I didn't actually take in when I was watching the video. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this one. Again, I think these videos are quite funny. If you want another army comparison one from the infographics show, suggest what you want to see, or just any other videos in general, just suggest them. And yeah, until next time, like, subscribe, peace.